And I are friends from way back when, and I've been with her from the start of Sankofa. And we often talk about what she had to go through to get to where she's gotten at. We have a standard joke that of her going to college, she just had 3 pair of pants and 5 white shirts. So, but look at her today, okay? But we talked, and I'm kind of like her sounding board, you know, and but she's a fantastic person. She loves everybody else, and I just love her dearly. But as anyone that knows Annetta knows that children are her love. Adults come in second, but children is who she loves. She wants to reach out and help everyone. I just am blessed. I am truly, truly blessed that God put her in my life. Like I said, I am just truly blessed to be with her, and she's the only person I know that I can call at 5 o'clock in the morning and get a conversation out of her, and it's a good thing. She's worked really, really hard. She doesn't take anything for herself. She doesn't even take time for herself. She's promised that we're going to go on some cruises, and I'm still waiting for that. But somewhere along the line, now she's talking about Africa, and she knows I'm scared to death to go out the country. So maybe we'll get up enough there for that. But my baby, I love you. I'm always here for you.
Thank you. That's a great way to start, Sister Reynoso. Am I pronouncing?
Reynoso. I'm going to tell you how to get decent children. Raise of the sun, know, and sow. Now, what's my name?
Reynoso. Sister Reynoso. Thank you so very much.
My name is Susan Petrell. I was born and raised on the west side of Chicago. I am currently a CPS educator. I've had 20 years in the system. Prior to that, 20 years in healthcare. As an educator, I'm now teaching 4-year-olds, preschool babies. For the last 5 years, 15 years, I had 3rd graders. And within those years, as Dr. McDaniel said, I've worked with those children. I've seen them come in with this baggage that they've had. And by the time they leave me, I've had some come back within the last week. One told me, I'm a senior in college. 2 more told me, we're sophomores in college. I'm at SIU Carbondale. I'm at Alabama A&M. I've had one come back and said, I just graduated from high school and I'm going to Georgetown University. So that has been a great joy to me to see those children that had this baggage come back and say, I've done this. And I told one, I said, you know, I think maybe it's time for me to retire. She told me, oh no, you still have some more lives to touch. I said, I've been doing this 20 years. She said, oh no, you have some more lives that you have to touch. So that's me in a nutshell.
That was nice.
20 years as an educator. We want to thank you so much for being a friend to Sister Annetta, but more specifically for being a very special, stellar educator here at the, I guess CPS stands for Chicago Public School?
Yes.
Okay. Sister, thank you very much. Queen?
Hi, my name is Josephine Robinson, and I serve as partner coordinator with World Vision. I've known Annetta for probably over 20 years. I met her when I worked on the south side of Chicago and ran a settlement house. So I don't know how many of you know about settlement houses, but I had the pleasure of running a settlement house for 20 years. Great, great opportunity. And Annetta was with the Illinois Caucus on teenage pregnancy. Am I saying it right, Annetta?
That's close.
That's close. So I I just connected with Annetta. When you love the Lord,
Amen.
which I do, and I work for an organization, and it's wonderful, and I am so glad I work for the Lord, and I work for an agency who loves the Lord. So we have devotion every morning. We can pray all the time. We close our doors down once a year, and we have a day of prayer. So it's great. I've loved the community. I've worked in the community now for over 40 years. And this is the first time that I've been able to not, I've always let people know that I love the Lord, but to work for an agency where you can say, this is who we are, this is what we believe, and we work with everybody, but we do it because we love Jesus. It's amazing. I'm always amazed. I'm at work and I'm in spiritual settings and I kind of say, wait a minute, God will give you the desires of your heart.
Yes.
Now unto him that's able to do exceedingly, abundantly, above what you can ask or think. So I thought about it, being in a situation like this, and working with Annetta. Her ears should burn. I talk about all the great work that she does in relationship to grandparents and grandchildren. And I've had an opportunity to be over in the building numerous numbers of times and actually talk with many of the grandparents that she works with, and to see the apartments, the quality of life that her organization has been able to give is just amazing. And then I support her with the Grandparents Award program that she has every year. And what's happening is that so many of our grandparents are not appreciated. And so to be able to be appreciative, and people are so excited. I have a lady that I've known for a long time, and she's raised probably 8 or 9 grandchildren, and most of them are college graduates, and I told her she should write a book. So when I first came back connected with Annetta around grandparents, I gave, I recommended her, and I've been able to do young grandparents, older grandparents, so it's just been a blessing for people to act. And I tell people all the time, if we want the change, we've got to be the change. We've got to do what we said. So we've got to, so instead of saying, wouldn't it be nice? I had a Sunday school teacher that told me, if you want something done, you do it. So I've been able to do things outside of World Vision. I love the Children's Defense Fund. Always a great admirer of Mary Wright Edelman. So they had a Child Defender Fellowship program. So I signed up. My daughter said, Mommy, what? I said, I've always had an opportunity. If you ever get a chance to go to the Proctor Institute, that happens every year in July at Alatelli Farm, life-changing, around people that love children, seeing children, and also I started a group. When you work with people that you love, you want to stay connected. So we have a group that I work with called Sisters in the Struggle. It's 7 of us. We've known each other for 30 years. And we do activities to encourage young people. We just had a conversation, and we want to do more intergenerational conversations, because young people's lives are complicated. They're very complicated. And what we need to do, and my daughter said, Mommy, you can't be in your 30s, because I am. I said, all right. So to be able to, and young people want to hear us, guys. They really do. If you're loving to them, they want to hear us. And I have a young lady who adopted me as her community mama. I have a goddaughter. I don't have any natural grandchildren. So I said, can I ask your children be my god-grandchildren? So I've got her. So we got things that we can do. We talk about the big things, but what are you doing with your family, with your people that you know, and loving them, because our young people are sponges for love, and what we have to do is an opportunity. So to be able to work for an agency that's what we focus on, and then to partner with people like Sankofa, and you know that that's what they do, and to be a part of a network of people that love children and love the community and want to give back. back, and people that are retired are busier than they were when they were working because they can do exactly what they want to do. So I'm excited, and I want to congratulate, because I don't know directly, but I've had friends who have been executive directors. That's a big burden. That's a big burden. And when you work for an agency, in addition to the wonderful things you do, but all the administrative and making payroll, I had a friend who recently passed away who I love dearly. She ran a health care center, and the state wasn't paying money right. So every payroll was a struggle. But she loved what she did, and she made it work. So my hats go off to people that have been able to do that. So my hats go off to Annetta, and I'm just glad to be a part of her village. And
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sister Robinson. World Vision,
it's a Christian organization
Right.
committed to improving child well-being. So we're in 100 countries around the world. We're the largest non-governmental organization that provides clean water in the world. Last year, we provided clean water to 4 million people. In addition, we have a U.S. programs, and we have 5 warehouses, and what we do is that we partner with, in Chicago, we partner with about 200 agencies, and they can come to our warehouse and get products to give out to the less fortunate. And our goal is to reduce poverty, eliminate poverty. So we have a big goal, and we do it one way is through products, and we do it, we have a teacher resource center where we help educators get free product because teachers spend a lot of money on their products, and then we have community engagement activities. So we do have these conversations because people say that there's not a lot going on. There's a lot of good things going on in the community. And our goal, one of my goals is to make sure that people are aware and make those connections.
Great. I'm very interested in some of the work you obviously do in that you are international. And before we I'm going to get right to the minister in just a quick second, but I was concerned about, interested rather, in the work that you're doing because of the number of disasters that are occurring in our communities, both here and internationally. Just by way of a little background, I helped convene an organization called the All Heroes Mental Health Alliance, and since Katrina hit, we have been working in the disaster area of recovery. And we are convening, I'll just share with Kate, 28th and 29th, we're doing a disaster conference in Baltimore. And the reason I keep referencing Kate is you may or may not have heard about the tsunami that took place in Mozambique, parts of Mozambique. What were the other areas?
Malawi, Uganda.
In particular, those 3 countries, they were devastating. And we've been trying to figure out ways in which we could be of assistance because he's back and forth in those countries. And those low-income communities are just decimated. So we're trying to figure out a way to get resources into those areas.
So, I didn't go, but World Vision, we have an arm that deals with disaster. So I'm sure that we're responding to those disasters. We have a whole arm of our organization that deals with that, and I'd be more than willing to talk to you about it. And we, both internationally, when the tsunami hit Indonesia, the things over in Haiti, we have things over in Dominican Republic. Like I said, we're in every continent but Antarctica. And we respond to natural disasters, both domestically and internationally. So I'm sure, and our focus is to work in partnership with children and their families that are the least resourced. So we are very deliberate. We don't work with places that people have resources. We work with places that don't have the finances but have the willpower to do it. And our organization stays in communities at least 10 to 15 years. So we're not in and out. Even with the disasters, Houston had Hurricane Harvey. We partnered with some of the local churches and actually opened a warehouse for 3 years and had product. So we do have a history. Oklahoma and Arkansas is flooded like us on our Facebook page, World Vision U.S. Programs, and we highlight some of the activities. So we definitely do that, and I'm sure those places that we are connected with as well.
Well, I was just going to say that we do, in fact, partner with World Vision.
Okay.
We have a partnership with you in the DRC.
Mm-hmm.
DRC means?
Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Mm-hmm.
And our CEO,
Okay.
Atul Tandon, came from World Vision.
See,
So we have a very close working relationship with
yeah.
World Vision.
It's so great to be a part of an organization that really works in partnership.
Yeah.
Because we love the Lord, but that's not our goal.
Yeah.
Our goal is to help people.
Yeah.
And we don't hide that we're Christians, but that's not what we're there to serve the people.
Yeah.
And whatever needs to happen, because one of the things I can say, I found out about wells. People do a lot of wells, but they don't maintain them.
Right.
So it's the same as not having one. Well, World Vision, we make a commitment and we develop a community council and we work with them so the water stays forever. So I'm thank you for that.
Yeah.
Amen.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
World Vision is a great organization, and it's good to meet you. And hopefully we'll get to talk some more about it. But we have a great partnership with World Vision in Africa. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you again, Sister Robinson. And as we segue into the next introduction, I'm in between two believers. I'm a believer, let me make that very clear. But as a heathen who needs direction, oftentimes I'm just kind of in this space at this moment. So let's segue into the Reverend who's already blessed me. I know when I leave here today, when I get on the plane tomorrow morning, Queen, I'm going to be sick, because I've been blessed. So thank you so much. Will you reintroduce yourself again for us, please?
I'm Apostle Dr. Carolyn Vessel, Carolyn L. Vessel.
Vessel?
Vessel, like a vessel of the Lord. Like a blood vessel, like a ship.
You got the right name.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That name came on down from my grandpa. So I am a Chicago-born and bred native, right here on the west side of Chicago. And I matriculated through Crane High School, which I'm very proud of. And grew up in Henry Horner housing development, where they said no good thing could come from. But I tell them something good came out of it because something good went in it. Right. They messed around and then we found out who I was. I was like, oh, that's the last thing you should do. Oh my God. Because the greatest tragedy in life is to be alive and not know why. And the second greatest tragedy is to be alive, know why, and then do nothing with your purpose while on this planet. And I have the esteemed pleasure of knowing Mother Annetta for nearly 40 years. I just turned 62 on May 5th. And I've known her for about 40 years. And had the wonderful pleasure of having her to advise me as I developed a very strong program in the community at Sinai Hospital. And that's where she gave me some leadership and guidance and helped me to develop the first state of Illinois Birth to 3 program. And she sat on the board and helped me to harness the community to come together to develop it for every mother in Oronde who was going to be delivering a baby, no matter what hospital she was delivering in. And it was a wonderful opportunity because it helped to deal with mortality and morbidity, and it helped to position those parents so that they would not be dealing with postpartum depression. There was a step-down component, and there's all kind of wonderful things. So we go back to that time period. And then in the development of Sankofa, I had the wonderful opportunity of being her first board chair. And I was a young girl back then. Hey, I just turned 40, just right around that age. And Mother Annetta gonna work you, I promise. tell people I love the smell of work, but I think she created work. After God, she had to be the one. Because she gonna work you. And they're right, she gonna call you. She don't care if you have no job. Come and do this. Baby, I need you to do that. I need you to show up here. And just a wonderful opportunity to be engaged and involved in that. And also to help to develop the first strategic plan for Sankofa. She gave me that opportunity. You know, when opportunity knocks, you want to be able to answer the door.
Amen.
And that is what has happened for my entire life in my relationship with her. And I love her and I respect her. And I changed my conference. I have the only community-based trauma conference that is held in the city of Chicago. And when Mother told me that this was the 20th anniversary weekend, I was like, God, you know we got to fix this, right? Because I cannot have my conference on the same day Mother's conference is. And our conference was originally a 2-day conference. Well, I canceled today, and we only held it yesterday. So that Thursday. So it would conflict with her yesterday or today or whatever. So I could be present here. Amen. And then my cousin passed, and her funeral is today, and I'm missing her funeral to be here with Mother Annette.
Wow.
Because when you're gone, you're gone.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot I can do for the dead at this point. Whatever I didn't do, I can't do, right?
Right.
But I'm here with the living.
Wow.
And the Bible said that the dead bury the dead, so I'm good.
Amen.
I'm here amongst those that I can help. I can't do anything more for my cousin, but I'm just saying how important she is to me. And then one of my church members' son got killed yesterday. So I told her, I'll have to see you when I get through with Mother Netta. Because again, I can't bring her back. You know what I'm saying? At that point, God didn't call me to go and do no resurrection stuff, so I had to be here with Mother Netta. And so you have to prioritize your life. And self-care is a very important part of that. And this is part of my self-care.
Yes.
Being here with the village.
Yes.
You know, we know that it takes a village to raise a child, right? But you know our village is sick, right?
Yes.
Y'all know our village is sick, right?
Yes.
So we got to get amongst the elders and those that are well, so we can stay well, so we can give more. And so that's why I'm here today to do that. I'm the CEO and president of I Am Able, which is the only indigenous mental health agency that is faith-based in the city of Chicago. And right here on the west side of home in Roosevelt. I came out of retirement. I retired at age 50, and then I was called to lead this organization. I was like, really, God? I was really enjoying my little retirement. And I was not going to take the position because I was enjoying my retirement. And how many black girls get to retire at 50? Come on, come on now, come on. Right? And so what God said to me is that you don't have to take it, but they could use your help.
Amen.
And at that, I reached out, got some advice. Mother Netta was one of them, and some more people that I trust, and I ended up taking the position. And I've never been at a job more than 5 years. 5 years is it. I was born the 5th month, the 5th day. 5 is it. Whatever you can't get out of me in 5, you don't get it. But I've been at I Am Able for 10 years.
Amen.
And I'm there because God said my name is on it. I am who I said I am. And God has done miraculous things. Our agency has doubled in size. Our budget has tripled in size. It's $1 million company now.
Amen.
When I came, they owed the IRS $100,000. I was like, Lord, you set me up. Oh my goodness. What the devil? Why didn't nobody tell me? I was messing with the IRS, right? But God and his kindness and favor when you obey him. Yes. He makes a way when there is no way. And so I'm grateful for that. But it's that energy that I get from Mother Annetta to fight on. You know, I saw her and she was 80 and she was still in the fight. I'm like, look at this girl, you go. And it gives me courage to run the race and to keep the faith and to know that God is able to do well above and beyond all we can ask or think according to the power that works in us. So I know that I'm a powerful woman because I serve a powerful God who knows everything. And the beautiful part is I don't have to know everything, just hang around with the one that knows everything. So he'll do a download. You know, anybody see The Matrix? You know how they need to know how to fly a plane, they just say, God, I need to download. Okay, God, I need to download. You already know nothing about that, right? And he just does stuff like that. And so I'm so excited and honored to be a part of this 20th anniversary celebration. I'm also the pastor of Way of Life Church International. We'll be celebrating our 22nd year anniversary on next month. And also, I have a mission center in Kenya, East Africa. It's called In Heaven's Eyes. Been going there since 1997. And we built that center so that the children would not be homeless and that they would always have food, clothing, shelter, and education. Because, if you don't have money, you can't go to school. And so we paid for about 49 children every day and the staff to take care of them. And so I'm so excited about In Heaven's Eyes and what has happened over those years. We have students who are now in college, university, going on to work in the military and helping to change the face of their community. And I am the firstborn of 4, and my mom is still alive. She's 83 as of June 3rd, and my dad is 93. Thank you, Lord. And so I am just blessed. And all of my siblings are born again, and we all work and serve the Lord. So thank you, Mother Annetta. I love you very much. And I want to talk about perversion when I get my children. That was my little introduction. And the mother of one son.
All right.
Let us say that his name is Antonio Easby, and he has an audiovisual business. I have to say that.
Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Vessel. We really appreciate your contributions to this community. I was really impressed with the work that you're doing, but I'm not quite sure if I understood what I Am Able does.
Mental health counseling. The only indigenous mental health counseling center on the west side of Chicago that is faith-based. So we get to pray and talk about Jesus and all that too. We don't proselytize. We don't tell nobody you need to be saved.
Amen.
But we live, when you come up in there, you're going to want to be saved.
Amen.
What is this I feel when I walk in the door? You feel the love of the Lord. And that is what our mission statement says. When people walk in the door, the healing should begin.
Amen.
Because of the love they feel and the acceptance and because of the professional care that they get. And we tell them you get the best of both worlds when you come to I Am Able. So you get the stuff that's out of this world, you get the stuff in the world, whatever you want, however you want it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Crane High School, I became familiar with you, a good friend of ours, of mine, is Dr. Conrad Worrell.
Yeah, I know that.
He was just sharing with me 2 days ago about the history of Crane High School. So I'm saying, wow, here I am now meeting a graduate.
Cougar. To the bone, right on.
And as Sister Robinson talked about Summer House, her experience, I was reminded of another good friend that I know here in Chicago who comes out of some of the house movement. That's Lucy Perkins.
Yeah.
Kate was showing me this morning. We came through, what's that very Lawndale. And Lucy always talked about Lawndale. So I'm feeling like I'm kind of at home.
And that's where our center is.
Ma'am?
Our mental health center is on Homewood Roosevelt in Oronde.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And then there's the other brother that Kate and I know mutually. That's a brother, he's now an ancestor, Dr. Bobby Wright. And his settlement house here. So Chicago is through Annetta and through others, kind of close to you all.
Yeah.
So we have only a few more minutes, I assume, because I'm really kind of winging this real big now. But making the assumption we only have a few minutes left, let's let the family. If you've heard some comments that jarred something in your memory that you'd like to have our distinguished panelists respond to, please feel free to just raise that question now, or any comments or observations you'd like to make. Now, I know this can't be the kind of, yes.
So I have a question for all of you in the work that you do. What keeps you pounding the table to show up every day on fire for the work that you do?
That is that it's not a job, it is my purpose. It is passion. I don't work for money because if you can be bought, you can be sold. I work because that's my purpose. This is what I was born to do. So it's not like going to work, but I get the work done.
Thank you. Dr. Robinson?
Thank you, I received it. It's my calling. And what's been wonderful is that my background is social work, and I have an older sister who I love dearly. And I've been blessed. Every position I've had has been something that I love. And she said, people go to work, so don't take it for granted. And every once in a while, work comes in. But I get excited because I know God has given me an opportunity. And the Bible says it gets better. I have a brother who's a preacher. It's 9 of us. And he tells me, don't get excited when things happen. And I said, I don't want to get excited, but I want to be appreciative because I don't want to take it for granted. So I'm so excited, and people, I smile a lot. So people talk about how negative young people are. That's not my experience. Because, people kind of, if I'm struggling downtown, young people stop me and say, you need help with your bag. So I try to demonstrate the love of Jesus. And I really feel blessed. I mean, I'm just, I kind of say, I get paid to do this, which I would be doing for free. And I find other things, volunteering, because I love, and I know we can make a difference because somebody made a difference in my life. Somebody made a difference in my life. So I know that if you speak a word and share with young people, their lives can be changed. And I had a mother who did it. So.
Thank you. Dr. Patel?
As for me, I'm from a family of educators, but when I graduated from college, I went into medical records administration. I went into healthcare, and I worked there for 20 years. And in the last 3 years, I taught at the junior colleges. But that program faded out, and God was saying, you needed to teach. I went back and got a second master's in education, and that's where I've been for the last 20 years. And to see some of my children come back, in fact, I have a little student now who's in 4th grade. Believe it or not, I taught his father when his father was in 3rd grade. And I taught his younger brother who's now in 1st grade. So it's like it was a calling that I had, and I don't have any biological children. And people say, please don't say that, because you have, and they start going back over 20 years saying that all of those are your children. So that's what it is.
That's so correct. Last and certainly not least, Dr. Reynoso, and I've taken the liberty of conferring doctorates on all these queens because of their years of service. Thank you. Dr. Reynoso?
Well, as a mother of 6 and a grandmother of 15, grandmother of 22, great-grandmother of 15, and great-great-grandmother of 3. I know what it's like, and as a single parent, I was a single parent, and I know what it's like for the strugglers out there. So my heart goes out to the young people that are out there, the mothers that are trying to make it, and to work with them. And like I said, I know the struggle. Of my 6 children, 5 of them have their college degree, to a doctorate, to a master's. My baby said, you're lucky you got me out of high school. So, and I can't complain. Like she wanted to be a mother, she did that. And the accomplishment, I have a daughter that's the chief of police in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I think we know about that, where the car went down the sidewalk and killed her. Well, I don't know why she went there, but anyhow. But what I'm saying is that I know the struggle. I know what takes place, and my heart goes out, and we've got to work with it. I hear people say, oh, I can't do anything. You can.
Amen.
It's what you got to, but you got to have somebody behind you. I had a strong mother that, when she said move, you were moving before she said move. And so this is what we have to go back to the old. I'm a firm believer, as you said, go back. I'm a firm believer in don't fix something that ain't broke.
Right.
And this is where we lose things. There are tendency to make changes where changes is not needed. We've got to reach back, and we've got to be strong and stand strong. And it's the elders. It's the elders that set the pace. And we've got to stay there and just keep hanging with our young girls. I mean, God is the source of all things. And I have 5 girls, 1 boy, 5 girls. And people ask my daughters, how did you all manage to get through high school and not be pregnant? And that was one of the big questions they had. And the answer was, we were more scared of my mother than my mom. And I said, why would you say something like that? And their answer was, God shows mercy. So this is what we especially our young black girls. The young black girls is the source to stop everything. Our young black girls, if they don't accept the gifts that the boys give them from selling the drugs, if they tell them, I don't want your money, no, I don't want you to do this, I don't want you to do that. Black women, the young black girls, can stop everything. They really should. They rule. Women rule the world, let's be honest with you. And these our young black girls, if we can get them to motivate the boys, believe me, our problems would be solved. And that's the one thing is that, and I'll tell anybody, the white man said, we could not break down the black family until they broke down the woman that heads the black family. And so Annetta has sat there and showed me some areas that she has worked in and what she has done to bring these girls along and to bring these young people along. And this is where we have to do our part. That's enough.
Thank you so very much. Have they been beautiful or not?
If you allow me, I would like to read what I wrote for Sankofa, just for a moment. And this was the thoughtfulness of why it exists. The spirit of perversion is an old spirit, and it seeks to pervert the truth by separating instead of securing children within the family structure. It requires thoughtfulness to understand kinship care and intentionality to develop an intervention strategy to vouchsafe our children within their family of origin and give the family leadership supports and wraparound services that ensure their success and stabilization. No other people on this planet have been mutilated, separated, and misplaced just because they're black. We are the objects of God's affection and the progenitors of society with divine survival skills. What Sankofa has given birth to is kinship refusal skills. We refuse to allow our children to be misplaced. We refuse to allow our grandparents who step up to the plate to retrieve the physical lives of our children, repair their emotional lives, and interrupt the brokenness that would overwhelm their child's life and ability to cope in life. Finally, we refuse to give up on each other as a people because we've been labeled, dislabeled, and left for dead after being separated from everything that is good in which we maximize our potential. Sankofa is part of our refusal skills mindset. Looking back, refusing to go back or take another whip across our back. We're looking ahead so as not to allow the evil of separation to dismantle our family structure. Therefore, Sankofa.
Thank you so much, Reverend. I'm going to close on these comments. I'm sure, because I've been watching those whose back is to the table, I've been watching the food come out. I'm sure at some point we're going to have to get to that point. And then I know that Oronde, I think, is our luncheon speaker, so I'm sure he's beginning to feel just a bit anxious. So I'm going to close on these comments. First of all, I'm honored that another queen would ask me to come up and sort of take us through the last half hour that we've been through. I don't mind following the orders of queens. I've always followed the orders of Annette. Now I met, what's the name just like Nikki. I'm following her orders. Well, I follow the orders because I'm just happy that queens have always stepped up to the plate. As I look around the room, I see, I think there are four of us. There's Oronde, there's Kate, and I haven't met the brother in the back. Queens have been really the backbone of our community. And I say this reverently. At some point, the brothers have got to step up and do what we know we're supposed to do. And I always like to remind brothers that we have an obligation to find a queen that will support us. Becky is not who we should be looking after. Samantha is not who we should be following. I'm very concerned about, I don't have these opportunities often. I'm at a stage in my life where I really don't quite care how I say things anymore. On August 2nd, with God's blessings, Reverend, I'll be 79. I will not have these opportunities many more times. I'm concerned about the race. And when I see brothers, I'm in and out of airports, and I see all these young dudes with Becky. What about all these We got them in every size. We got them in every color. Anything that you want, we've got right here in our community. So I'm always, wherever I am, I'm saying exactly what you hear me say now. And I'll give this as an example. I'm not a hypocrite. When Kate can attest to this. When I worked in state government, I came home, I worked in Albany, that's where I was based. I hope you just bear with me for 1 quick second. I was based in Albany, New York. And I had moved my family up to Oronde, a very sterile community, and cold and white. So I came home, I had been down to the World Trade Center, that's where our office was at the time, prior to all of this happening, in terms of the law. But our office was on the 23rd floor. And I got back up to Albany, and I asked my wife, I called her Puddin', that's how sweet she was.
All right now.
I said, Puddin', how are the kids? She said, and that's Dr. Sharon. You always hear her say, how are the children? That's what I said to my wife. She said, well, Keoka is on, she's in her room, she's got a friend, and Kwame, that's our son, he's playing. Our son Kwame at the time was 7, our daughter Keoka was 10. I walked upstairs, here's Samantha. I went right back downstairs, I said, Puddin', tomorrow morning, we're out of here. We're going down to the New York City area. We're going to find a home where we're going to find a black community. We finally found a home in a little place called Greenburgh, New York, which is a suburb of White Plains. And we lived there for 23 years. I commuted from White Plains to Albany 3 days a week. I worked out of the New York City office 2 days a week. And why did I do that? That was because if my son Kwame was here today, he would tell you. I told him, if you bring Samantha home, you're going to be right out there in the street, son. So he said, Daddy, that's kind of hard. I said, I want you to hear this very clearly. So he understood that. He has never brought Samantha home to our home, not that I'm aware of. He married a beautiful black woman. That's one. 2, if you decide that you're going to be educated, which you must in this home, at the time there were 120 HBCUs. For your undergraduate degree, you must go to an HBCU. For your graduate program, you can go any place in the university. But if you're going to get a brown penny from this Negro here and Puddin', you have to go to an HBCU. So why do I say all those things? We can set the foundation for our children early on so they can have that selection. I'm going to stop now because I get carried away with this. Because we are at a stage in our development where we're about to become extinct. And there's so many factors that are playing into it that we just don't know. Sharon's presentation this morning, I can't wait to get those statistics so that I can begin now to figure out, when I speak publicly, how can I tie in the foster care issue with how we're becoming extinct. I want to thank all of you for listening to my rambling comments and my willingness to be sort of unorthodox, for lack of a word. But Annetta knows that's how I roll. I've rolled this way for the last 50 years. There's no way in the world I'm going to change. Thank you, Queen. Give your love. Just give your love.
And maybe some other people know, is it true that we are the only race that has no voice in America as it relates to who adopts our children?
That's correct.
Yeah. That is correct.
That is correct.
They said every other race, you cannot adopt their kids unless you go by them first, and then they decide or whatever. And a social worker just told me that one of my old clients from Stateway, and I was like, what? She said, no. Black kids can go to anybody can get them. And they don't have to stop by us before they get our kids.
Our lunch speaker is one of the preeminent experts on black adoption.
Yes.
There's no one better than him.
Okay.
You see those two?
Yes.
They were about voices, along with someone else out of them. Let's see, we had about 12 of them. There's a brother by the name of Jaya John, who was adopted by a white family. He's one of Oronde's best friends. So they are the experts. They're the ones who've given me the courage to speak up on adoption issues. And the National Center for Black Social Workers, you well know, we've always, since 1972, that are against transracial banking. Because we know that within our own community, we have the resources. We don't need to go around those people asking them to help us.
Well, they give my kids anybody.
There you go.
I mean, anything,
I know.
any back, or no back.
You're right.
We've had some awesome conversations earlier today, and I believe that is now going to be carried out and continued with Oronde Miller. Oronde Miller is the founder and executive director of the Institute for Family and Child Well-Being. And he's a proud father, son, brother, friend, and conscious student of life. He is here to help us to be more enlightened in his passion. And I look forward to hearing more about it. He is serves again, as I just mentioned, as the senior director of strategic consulting of the KC Family Programs. He was the senior research assistant at the Child Welfare League of America. He has a plethora of experience with working with child welfare concerns, and we are just, again, looking forward to hearing more from him. I am not going to mess this up anymore, so we're going to go ahead and welcome our friend Oronde to the podium. And I will say that before he comes, or while he's coming, one of the things that I was really interested in hearing about from him, and one of the things that's near and dear to my heart, is this whole conversation we were having earlier about Black adoption. A lot of people don't know this, but my husband and I are adoptive parents. And we actually adopted our daughter when we were 23 years old. So it wasn't like something we wanted to do, it was something we had to do. We knew that we wanted to be a part of the solution for our families, Black families in particular, and we knew that adopting was one of those things that we were definitely destined to do. And so we adopted through, we're from Kansas City, Missouri, and so we adopted through an agency at the time. It was Kansas Children's Service League Black Adoption. That's what they set out to do, was to recruit and help foster families that would actually adopt Black children. And so to hear that that is kind of being undone these days saddens me, and I can't wait to hear more about what we need to do as a community to help encourage more Black adoption. Doesn't mean that, I know there's a lot of fertility issues and all of the life that go on, but that doesn't mean that if that isn't your issue, that you should not consider adoption. We have 2 biological children and 1 adopted child. It was just something that we wanted to do for our family, and I think that that's so important that we consider it as a Black community as we move forward as a culture. So I come up to introduce Dr. Miller, and hopefully we will hear more and be encouraged more to do that.
Well done, sister.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can I have many elders in the room, and so I want to start off by asking permission from my elders to speak.
Yes, permission granted.
Thank you. I first just want to say that it really isn't, so I'm here because Mama Netta asked me to be here. I'm super clear. And I do want to say it really is a privilege to be here. And as much as I will come and show up whenever I'm asked to, this being here in particular in Chicago is really special because my understanding on a professional side about what this child welfare work is and looks like and feels like, it actually started here in Chicago. It was work that I was doing when I lived in DC, but it was work that we were doing in partnership with folks here because of the leadership of folks like Mama Netta, Mike Burns, and others here in Chicago. And so I'll come back and say a little bit more about that, but I just want to say that, you know, it's never lost on me anytime I have a chance to come back to Chicago and spend time talking about the meaning and significance of this work. I really want to acknowledge, and so I did acknowledge Mama Netta and just, you know, the sheer light that she has been, that you have been, since I began doing this work back in 1990, whatever. So I say that, so I'm 47 now, and so, but professionally when I started doing this work, but Mama Netta was a part of a group of elders that really taught me what this work is. I'm not a trained social worker, but I've been adopted. And I claim black social workers. I claim being a social worker just because of the work that I'm able to do. Recognizing that there is training that social workers get that I don't have. But I want to acknowledge Mama Netta. I also want to acknowledge Baba Leonard. Leonard Dunstan has been an elder and a presence and a wise example. About what leadership looks like, what integrity looks like, and what commitment to this work looks like, and the ability to tell the truth. And so, Bob Leonard, just when you were up here a few minutes ago, and you said that, you know, you're going to be 78 or 79, 79, and so you can say what you want now, but you didn't say what you wanted for.
Thank you.
Years that I've been able to sort of to learn from your example, and it is a powerful example. And so thank you. I say thank you to Mike Burns, who is an elder and influence of mine, a teacher of mine, and I say the same thing about Sharon McDaniel. And so while Sharon McDaniel and I might be among the folks that I've listed the closest in sort of age, but I'm clear that Dr. McDaniel is my teacher, and you have been. And I'm not saying that from an age perspective, I'm saying from sort of presence in the work. It is true. It is true for age too, and so I acknowledge that. But it is absolutely an honor to sort of sit at the feet and sort of learn this work from folks who have been so passionate and have been doing it for so long. So what I want to do, I want to say something about my background, my journey. And then I want to tie that into the significance of this moment, the 20th anniversary for Sankofa, and the leadership that really grounds this work here. And some of that will include some of these reflections on adoption, certainly more so from a personal perspective, but it will have some implications for what this work looks like in the field, and the reality that a lot of this stuff is being undone. And I'm learning that, having been in the field for about 20 years, that there are these patterns. You get these moments where you get these sort of small wins, if you will, small because they're small in the sense that they achieve something that folks have been working towards, but they don't transform the entire system, and they certainly don't change the life outcomes for most of our families. So they're small and they're important, but they're still small. So I'm going to try to jump in. The other thing, and I want to say something about the significance of this in a few minutes, but I'm here with my daughter. And so my daughter, Aya, someone who I had a chance to either meet or to see. When I first started doing this work professionally, it was around the time that Aya was, actually, let me not say that. I had been in the work for a few years. But when Aya was born, she was born into this community. She was born into the community of elders that really grounded me in this work. And so when Aya was just a month or a couple months old, I think that was the first time you met some of the folks who were in this room. And so you know this now. And so you experienced it then, but you have no recollection of it. But you sat in these rooms, in these conferences, whether they were the Black Administrators and Child Welfare conferences. I actually have a picture of Baba Leonard holding you at a BACW conference in DC when you were just a baby. And so it means a lot to me that you are here. And I know that it also means a lot to the folks who are in this room that you're here too, because they poured a lot into you. So I want to say something about my brother and I's personal journey, and specifically as it relates to adoption, and why this work and the work that many of you all do is so important. And so my brother and I were born in Lorain County, Ohio, to a white mother and black father. They were not together. Well, they were not married. They were obviously together because they a white mother, black father. And so when my brother, when she got pregnant with my brother, her family, deep West Virginia roots, and so white mother, deep West Virginia roots, black father, roots in Alabama, and he ended up in Ohio. But her family kicked her out, and they said that you can go to the maternity home in Cleveland and give birth, and when you do, you give them up for adoption, and you can come back home. And if you don't, then you cannot come back home. You're not welcome here. You don't do that here. You ain't welcome here. You ain't getting no support from us. You ain't even gonna exist to us. And so she decided when she gave birth to Cardi that she wanted to keep him. And so they stayed and they kept their word. She did not exist to them anymore. And so she got pregnant with me shortly after that. And so I was born in 1972. And so she tried to hang in there for as long as she could. And so I was about 3 months old. And she finally decided that she couldn't give us the life that she thought we needed. And she also, I think, was just conflicted in terms of how you reconcile, or for her, how she reconciled her family relationships and the struggle that she saw ahead in terms of trying to take care of us. And so she placed us in the social services agency in foster care there in Lorain County. I guess that was around July or so, June or July, August of 1972. And so her only ask of them was to keep us together. And so we bounced around to a couple of foster placements in Ohio for several months. And so there were 3 placements. 2 of the placements we were together, and then the final placement we were separated. And at that time, one of the things that that the social services agency there in Ohio, they were committed to keeping siblings together. They were trying to keep siblings together, which was really ahead of their time for the field. And so either way, simultaneously, as all of this is happening, there are the seeds of a black adoption agency being sort of birthed in Detroit. And so we ended up being placed into an adoptive family through Homes for Black Children in Detroit, Michigan. And so the sort of seeds behind Homes for Black Children really started around 1967, 1968. And there was actually, the founding executive director was Sidney Duncan. But Sidney is clear that she wasn't the founder, it wasn't her vision, it wasn't her idea. She was brought in to lead the agency after they were developing it. And so it was, Lois Whitney was the woman who did the seed work. And I think it was with the United Way there in Detroit. It was her vision, and she was the wife of a physician, a black woman, wife of a physician there in Detroit. And so what she did was belong to a lot of these organizations, and she sat on these boards, and so she helped to guide some of the social sort of work, and those really are the seeds of, you know, a lot of the social work movement. And so it was her vision to have an adoption agency that focused on getting black children into black families, because black families weren't having any success going through these white agencies who wanted to adopt. And so while that was happening around 1967, 1968, Homes for Black Children ended up being tremendously successful. They had been pressing the state of Michigan to open up sort of some pools of black families that were going through the licensing process. And so they put a lot of pressure on the state of Michigan to start placing black children with them as a recruitment agency in many ways. They were so successful that the state of Michigan stopped placing black children with them.
Wow.
And so that was in 1969, 1970, 1971, and right around that 1971, I had a chance to sit and talk with Lois Whitten and Sidney Duncan, much more with Sidney Duncan, but Lois Whitten too, which was a huge privilege. But as successful as they were by 1971-ish, 1972, they stopped getting the sort of cooperation and partnership with the state of Michigan. So they took the black families that they had recruited and started to go to other states to find black children to place with those families. So that's how the connection to Ohio came about for homes for black children. And so, so while all that was happening, they were, searching out for homes, and so that's the connection that came to Homes for Black Children. We were placed with Homes for Black Children with a family, excuse me, in 1973. Thank you. And the first family that we were placed with, there was obviously a black family. The mother wanted to adopt, but the father didn't. The husband didn't. And so their relationship was sort of strained. And so we were placed with them. My brother, 11 months older than I am, and by that time, was this 1973. So he was around 2 years old. And so the father was abusive to my brother, and was almost sort of detached from me. And so my brother had sort of vague recollections of sort of the tension, not necessarily memories of anything that happened, but sort of vague recollections of like this tension. And so the mother contacted Homes for Black Children. Homes for Black Children came right out because at that point they had not had any disruptions. They had not had a single disruptive adoptive placement up until that time. And so they came right out, took us, and then placed us with our mother and father, for Jellen and Elwood Miller. And so the story has been beautiful since then. Mom and Dad, they met at Western Michigan University. After they finished Western, they moved to Detroit. They became members of Shrine of Africana, and so very culturally grounded in terms of sort of cultural orientation, racial identification, politics, and everything else. And so that's how we were raised. That was my influence growing up. And so we couldn't have asked for a better sort of journey, as it turns out. I didn't learn all of this until I became an adult. And so we knew we were adopted, but we didn't know the real story. Both of us grown out of college, working, and in 2000, my brother was diagnosed with cancer, with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And the sort of early sort of outlook and everything else, they told him he had about 6 months to live, something like that. It was stage 4, the worst symptoms. And so he went and did some experimental treatments, and then he came back. That didn't work. And he came back and started to do some of the form of chemotherapy. And so the first, and it was so advanced that he was doing some experimental treatments, and so none of those ultimately worked. Doctors came in to talk about hospice care, and his wife at the time just happened to ask. They said that they had done some searches of the registry for blood donors and everything else, and they didn't find any. And so his wife at the time just happened to ask, like, what if he has a sibling? Like, does that matter? Does that open up any other possibilities? And the doctors had never asked. They knew that he was adopted, and they knew that he had a brother, but they assumed that I was not his brother by birth, a blood relative. And so she just happened to ask when they came in. And so that opened up a whole new line. And so I was able to donate my stem cells the first time, and his body rejected. So we did the test, and all the markers came back except one, had to do it again. The second time we did the test, they all came back, so I was able to be the donor the first time. And that was around 2001 when my daughter was born. His body rejected the stem cells the first time, his immune system, and so we were able to do it again. And the second time we did it, it gave him another 10 years of life. Wow. And my brother's name, our parents, our mother and father, Jellen and Elwood Miller, they named us again when they adopted us. And so my brother's name is Kariaskia Miller, and it means a kingly warrior. And so there's nobody that I've met that has had a sharper warrior spirit than my brother. And I say that it was not always used in a cultural way, not to support African people. He was always fighting somebody about something. But he absolutely, he had a really strong warrior spirit, and I learned so much from his example. So those 10 years, as much as people say that that was a gift to him, that was a gift to me. That was a gift to me. That was a gift to me. And so it was during that time that we actually went through a process of trying to find out our medical records and our family sort of medical history, and we were able to reconnect with our birth mother and birth father. So there's another part of that story in terms of what that looks like as an adult adoptee. But the reason I want to share some of that is because it wasn't until I was an adult professionally that I actually started to do this work. And it wasn't, I don't think I'm clear that nothing is by accident. But I didn't go to school to become a social worker. I'm an educator by training. I got my undergrad degree in elementary education and decided to go to grad school and study developmental psychology. And it was because of the work of my advisor at Howard in DC. And he was doing race work that was focused on trying to integrate this idea of cultural socialization. He had threads of sort of an African sort of cultural connection there, although he tried to describe it in sort of looser or sort of plainer terms. But it was inspiring to get connected to somebody who was trying to link some of these experiences of black children in these school systems and cultural oppression. And so schools being used as an instrument of oppression. And so decided to stay there. Fell out with my advisor, ended up going over, one of my professors at the time was Jaya. Some of you all know Jaya John, but Jaya was my professor, only a few years apart in age. But Jay was my professor at Howard, social psychology professor, and the only professor at that time that was using Mama Marimba Ani's book, Ururu, in the classroom. And all the other professors in the department were looking at him like he was crazy, which is why he ended up leaving. But either way, Jay and I connected during grad school. And so Jay went over to work with an organization that was starting up connected to the School of Social Work, and it was the National Center on Permanency for African American Children. The National Center was the coming together of black adoption agency leads, executive directors for the first time, to organize around a permanency movement with resources to get black children out of the child welfare system. Not the first time that folks had organized, but at least with those kind of resources and a vision for how to do that, it was a unique moment. So the agency directors made up the sort of core group, and then there was an advisory council surrounding. It was that group of elders that introduced me to this work. And it was through that experience that I was able to meet Sidney Duncan and to get connected to other folks who were in this room. And so our charge was to develop a model for doing recruitment and retention of black families to get them through the licensing process so that we could get more of our children out of the system and into black families, into black homes. And so that work was inspiring. From that moment on, there are all kinds of experiences that I was able to have, but there were a couple of key learnings from that moment that were just really, really critical. Somebody mentioned, I think it was elder right here, I can't remember your name. But one of the things that you mentioned was, and I think it was in a question, but it was this idea that if we take care of our children, then we don't have to worry about all these other families coming in and adopting our kids. Mm-hmm. And so the first person that I heard come with that kind of message was Sidney Duncan. And she said that she was involved in some of those conversations about transracial adoption, but she tried not to go out publicly and be in the media and all of that as the National Association of Black Social Workers was taking some of this on, because her position is, I want to do the work. I want to do the work, and I want to get our families through the licensing process so that we can get our children back home. I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but that was her philosophy, that was her passion, and that was her example. And so that was one of the things that I heard early on, and then got exposed to the early sort of 60s and 1970s work that the National Association of Black Social Workers was doing, to try to make sure that we had our families available and that we could create whatever policies and everything else that we need to block this movement around transracial adoption. It was also through some of those experiences that I got connected to and exposed to black administrators in child welfare. And it was through Dr. Sharon McDaniel's example, it was through Mama Annetta's example and others. And so I was able to get connected to organizations that had been doing this work. And so I had a model, I had an example, I had people to learn from and people to learn with, to learn how to look at policy, to learn how to use data to make the case in the work, to look at practice and policy changes that needed to come about. And so you all have been so instrumental, so instrumental. And so I want to use that as sort of a backdrop to sort of turn and talk about the significance of this moment, the significance of this occasion. And so this is the 20th anniversary for Sankofa Safechild initiative. And so I'll sort of read the mission, although you all know the mission of Sankofa, to provide trauma-informed supportive services, supportive housing, referrals to resources that encourage underserved families and communities to be strong, self-sufficient, and remain intact. There's a lot built into that. And as much as those words might sound plain, for our families to be self-sufficient and independent and self-reliant, there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot that goes into that. And there are a lot of folks that don't want that to be the case, which is why we have a lot of this craziness that happens in our community every single day. And all the other kind of supports and services that are being provided, there are a lot of folks that don't want those supports and services to come to our families. And so if you just bear with me, I'm not a doctor on TV, but I'm gonna play a doctor, or at least a scientist, for the next few minutes in the room. So at 47 years old, and I was joking about this a little bit earlier, I pay a lot more attention to my health today than I ever have before. Part of that is because my body is still working well, and so I'm thankful, I'm grateful, and I give thanks every day. But I feel some of the stuff when I'm not working out. And I'm also mindful about all these things that impact us, whether it's high blood pressure, if it's diabetes and everything else. And so I'm looking at my blood sugar because I've been borderline. And so I'm paying a lot more attention to all of these things that happen in my body. And so the thing that I want to really just come back to is the blood. And so when I think about Sankofa, what I think about is that Sankofa in many ways is the lifeblood of many parts of the sort of social network that's supporting Black families in Chicago. And that means something. That really does mean something. And so just thinking about blood, you have sort of the obvious functions of blood. It takes oxygen throughout the body, sort of as building blocks to keep the organs functioning, to keep our body parts functioning, and it also pulls waste away and takes it to the kidneys and the liver and sort of the digestive system to get this waste out of the body. So a critical function. It also serves as a healing agent in many ways when we are either exposed to illness and even when we become ill. And so you have these different types of blood cells. You have the red blood cells that really do this sort of building block work with, in terms of oxygen. You've got the white blood cells that go out and sort of look for disease, and they sort of try to rally around sort of illness as it presents itself in the body. And then you have the platelets too, which sort of help to stop the bleeding if there's some sort of trauma. The interesting thing, and I was trying to understand some of this, but you have, and I really didn't know this, but the red blood cells, their life cycle is about 4 months. And so for the platelets, they only last 9 days. And so all of this is continuously being generated and regenerated in the body through the bone marrow and through these natural processes. But the amazing thing is that we don't know any of this stuff is happening. It doesn't do anything to us, it doesn't talk to us, it doesn't say like, hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It just happens. It just happens. It's a process that just naturally happens. I would say that that's what happens with Sankofa. That's what happens with agencies and organizations like Sankofa. There are folks that have a mission. There are folks that are clear about what that mission is, and that mission is to heal and to keep our families together. Nobody's asking Sankofa to come out and sort of birth itself. It was birthed out of people that had a mission, that saw a need and went out to respond to that need and have been responding for over 20 years. That's how Sankofa came to be. That's how Sankofa came to be. All the advocacy and everything that Sankofa does, it's responding to the need that exists within community. And so if you think about this, the blood just doesn't appear throughout the body. Like there's a force that has to make that happen. And that force is the heartbeat. And the heartbeat of Sankofa has been Mama Aneta for all these years. For all these years. That heartbeat is what's responsible for pushing out the resources, for organizing, for getting folks to respond to trauma, getting folks to respond to things that are shifting, getting folks to think about what's coming down the track. White blood cells, going out looking for stuff that's happening, trying to pay attention to see what's on the horizon before the trauma happens, but seeing the signs of it that are presenting. That's what Sankofa does. That's what Mama Aneta does and has been doing for over 20 years. Yep. 20 just with Sankofa. That's a critically important function. And so I just want to say that it is a privilege to be able to support, to be able to respond, to be able to show up when I'm asked to. It's a privilege to have been able to learn at your feet, all of your feats, over these many years. And so I say that certainly in the context of the work that happens on the ground, but I'll also say that in the context of the work that happens throughout this country. And so I see Mama Aneta, and I certainly see Baba Leonard and Kate, and I see Dr. McDaniels, I see Mike at meetings throughout this country, whether it's through NABSW or through BACW, and the same impact that they're having within their respective communities, they're also having in these larger national settings. And it's a privilege to be able to watch that and to learn from it, and in some cases even to participate. As I sort of wrap up some of these closing remarks, I've spent the last 3 years of my life, sort of professionally, working at the Kellogg Foundation in Michigan. And so I want to say that what brought me to the Kellogg Foundation was not the racial equity work that's happening there. That became a reason that I could go there and feel like I could do some meaningful work. I didn't grow up in philanthropy. Philanthropy is evil in many ways, but there are resources in philanthropy that we need to have access to. But what took me to Kellogg was the fact that my daughter was in high school in Michigan. That's what took me to Kellogg. My daughter started her freshman year in 2015. And I'm not putting all your business out there, but my daughter struggled during her freshman year. And so I was still living in Maryland at the time, grew up in Detroit, always wanted to get back to Detroit. But what kept me in Maryland was my daughter and my son, Damani. And so when Aya started school at Cranbrook and was struggling her freshman year, there was no way and there were incidents that happened where I had to get up and go and get back to Michigan in order to be present. Driving instantly, just as soon as you find out something's happening, you get on the road and you drive those 8 to 10 hours. And you do what you have to do, and you turn back when you can and you go back. But my insistence was that I wanted to find some way to get back there and be closer to her. And so the opportunity to work at the foundation came up, and I wasn't interested because it was really inconsistent in terms of what I saw that they were doing. What they said they were doing didn't match, so it wasn't consistent depending on who you were talking to or what have you. And so I'm certainly proud to be there. I'm proud of the work that we're able to do while we're there. Disappointed at many times because of what it feels like to work in that space. I'll say that the last 3 years are the most loneliest years that I've had in my professional life. The loneliest 3 years that I've ever had in my professional life. I feel more disconnected for the last 3 years than I have in the entire time that I've been a professional. But what took me there was the fact that my daughter was there, and my commitment was to get back, do meaningful work, but family always comes first. Family always comes first. And so I'm proud of the fact that Aya's just graduated. She's moving on to college in the fall. But I say that to say that, the work that we do at the foundation, and this is really the point I want to get to, we frame it as racial equity work. And part of the dilemma that I had when I went there is that racial equity work, for all intents and purposes, is really about how to create more opportunities for black folks to be a part of the same madness that's been playing out in this country. We just want our part. We want our part of the dollars, we want our part of the administrative position, we want our part of all the systems, but it's not necessarily trying to create anything that supports independence for our people. And so the dilemma for me when I went to do that work is that work of racial equity, it can, and all of us are trying to make it into that, but it can have an institution building component to it, but that's not what philanthropy was created for. And so this racial equity work that's being sort of constructed and driven by and sort of shaped by philanthropy, it really is about access and opportunity, but it's not the independent institution building for our people. It's not. So the dilemma for me when I went is like, how do you go and sort of wrestle with that? How do you go and try to negotiate that? And philanthropy was set up to do something. It was very clear about what it was set up to do. And it's to maintain power in many ways, and to sort of recycle the status quo. And so that's a dilemma that I continue to wrestle with. But I just say that to say that the lesson that I've gotten from my elders is that you always continue to stay connected to the work as much as you can. You always try to drive and advocate and find resources to support our people and our institutions as much as you can. I think part of the lesson has been when you are not able to do that, then you go and you find other ways to do it. And so that's one of the big lessons that I've gotten from you, Mama Netta. It's one of the big lessons I've gotten from you, Baba Leonard. It's the lesson that I've gotten from you, Mike. It's the lesson I've gotten from you, Sharon. It's the lesson that I've gotten from you in terms of the cultural component, Kate, through NABSW. Like, how do you use, and this is the significance of Sankofa, how do you use the best wisdom that we have to draw from in our long history and use that to propel us moving forward? And I have to say, of all the agencies that I've seen, Sankofa has been at this for 20 years and has not fallen off track and has not missed a beat. And so I thank you for the example, and I thank you for the sort of privilege of being able to come and spend time and celebrate with you. Thank you. So, do I sit down or discuss what's next?
Are there any questions?
Did you ever get a chance, you said you had met your biological mother and father. Has there been any makeup or, what came out of that meeting?
So I had an opportunity, and this was when my brother passed away in 2012. And so it was earlier in that process, and he was really driving it because of the sense of urgency. But after, and I can say much more about how that happened. We went, one route, we went through the public agency in Michigan, in Wayne County, in order to try to get access. And at the same time, we were doing our independent research. And it was actually the coming together of two of those threads that allowed us to find out who they are. So we did have an opportunity to meet them. My brother spent much more time with them. But we met our birth father. And when we were placed in foster care, and this is what I didn't say, but this is an important note, he didn't know that she took us to the agency. He didn't know, and his family didn't know. And as soon as they found out, and it was within a week after we had been taken and placed in social services, they actually went to the agency to try to get us out, and they turned them away. Wow. They turned them away. And they said that if you were that, and I don't know if these were the exact words, but it was something to the effect of, if you were that involved and that interested, then it wouldn't happen in the first place. And so as much as they may have been sort of ahead of the time in terms of wanting to keep siblings together, they were racist, and they did not engage fathers. They did not engage fathers. And child welfare systems today are not good at keeping siblings together. are still racist, and they do not engage fathers. And so some of these patterns never change. So we got to learn a little bit more of that in talking with him and learning about his family's experience. We also met our birth mother, and speaking of trash bags, it's not exactly the same thing. I wasn't there, but my brother had a chance to go up in her attic, and she never wanted to make that decision. She felt like she had to. She felt like it was the right decision to make at the time. But when she did, she actually had our belongings that she still had, and they were in a trash bag in the corner of her attic. And so you talk about trauma, and you talk about what we do to like the hurt and the pain that we carry. And I'm making this comment about our birth mother, but this is true for us too. This is what we do. We put it in a little place and we hide it away. And so she just started bawling when she took Harry up there and sort of went and showed him the stuff that was in the bag. That's what we do. And so it answered a lot of questions that he had. He grew up with a lot of those questions because he had some of these sort of impressions that I didn't have. But it was a privilege to be able to meet them both. I and I were just talking about both of them on the drive up yesterday. And so I haven't been in as regular contact with them, and it's been about 3 or 4 years since I've talked with them. And so we're going to make it a point to go either later this summer or sometime pretty soon. But we did have a chance to meet them, and it was a sort of life-changing experience for both of us. Please.
Did your mom and dad, did they have any other children?
So birth mother and birth father? Yes. So this is where the story gets it's always complicated. So our birth mother, I think was 17, something like that. She had graduated high school, but just graduated high school. And she didn't have any other children. This was her first, I think, maybe serious relationship. Our birth father, he was married, and he told her that like he was getting divorced. But it was true. He was actually getting divorced, and I think this sort of sped up the process. But either way, he had 7 children in the first marriage. And this is really interesting, just speaking about the Leonard's comments. His first marriage was with a black woman, and they had been together for some time. Don't know the context, don't know what happened, don't know anything else. And so we have 7 other siblings through sort of, we didn't have siblings, but 7 siblings through that first relationship. And then we had 2 more siblings that came after he and our birth mother sort of went their separate ways. And so there are 11 of us all together on our birth father's side. And there are 3 other siblings on our birth mother's side. And so I've had a chance to meet most on our father's side and 2 on our mother's side, but not all of them. And they knew about us. They knew about us. And so they were just as anxious to meet us.
So, Oronde, I'm always just so honored to hear your story, and I learn so much more every time I hear it. And the eloquence in which you tell it is just remarkable. And so you talk about, because I'm thinking as you were talking about the last 3 years, in the context of your adult professional life, and we were talking about how we show up in predominantly white spaces as African people. And so talk to us about the vulnerability and the self-efficacy that keeps you there. And I know you talked about it, but what else? So what's next? Because I think your brilliance surpassed what the foundation can manage. But where do you see yourself going?
It's a good question. What I'll tell you is what burns on my spirit is where I have found the most joy is, so before moving over to do this work in child welfare, I really got to, so my advisor, professor at Howard University was Wade Boyd. And so he had this theory, the triple quandary, and so this triple quandary was talking about these sort of 3, he had his version of sort of the voices sort of dilemma. that we face. And so for Boykin, it was this sort of African cultural sort of ethos, this sort of mainstream experience, and the experience of being a minority, quote unquote, which is distinct and apart from being an African person. And so, like that passion, like trying to figure out, my passion has always been from doing some of that early work around socialization, African socialization processes, studying those in different places, and trying to figure out how we bring the best of that here. And I will tell you that professionally, I sort of moved down the path when opportunities presented themselves, but I've never sort of gone out and created the path, or sort of gone after what it was that's been burned in my spirit. And so the longer I stayed, in this case at the Kellogg Foundation, but it was sort of happening in the stages before, like that's what's driving me. And so that's part of what's pulling me sort of back into something else, whatever that will end up looking like, whenever. But the other part is child welfare. Like our families are struggling.
Yeah.
Our families are struggling. And I remember sitting, and I shared this a few minutes ago when we were sitting at the table, I remember in the late 90s, around 99, 2000, 2001, when the National Center was forming. And we were, at this particular instance, it was at a conference in DC. It was a BACW conference in DC. And there was a workshop that was specifically designed to help Black administrators and Black professionals learn how to analyze policy from a Black family perspective. Literally going through the nuts and bolts of reading policy line by line to interpret what it means in historical context, to interpret what it means in contemporary context, understanding the larger pattern of what's happening in the profession, and thinking about what our families need. And those early conversations were around recruitment of Black families and how you get policies that really support the recruitment of Black families and getting them through the process. It was around licensing requirements or licensing, the barriers to getting our families through the process around criminal background. And so having a criminal record in terms of people being in the house, the relationship between those policies and kinship care, and getting our relatives through the process, like literally going through that policy analysis, like I learned a lot through that process. And now 15, 20 years later and seeing the way that stuff gets undone, like I feel like there's so much more work that we've got to be doing. And it's not just to fight for the policies, but it's to build some sort of infrastructure so that that work continues. Because you can't win a policy and move and leave and sort of run away and move on to something else. They are always trying to come after our families. And I think as professionals, we get into this work and we think that we sort of go after these policies and we get the win, and that's sort of a notch on our belt as professionals, not everybody. But then we take our eye off the ball. And so now we're fighting the same fights that I'm saying we, when I started doing this work 15, 20 years ago, but that you all have been fighting for your entire careers. And so like I want to get back into that work more deliberately as well. But it is true. You get into these spaces and I'll tell you in philanthropy, they tell you as soon as you get there, folks told you, like you're not gonna have any more friends when you get there.
True.
The last friend that you made before you got there, that's gonna be the last friend that you make. Because you become isolated. You become isolated and you're trying to fight and access resources, but you're also sort of always responding to stuff that's sort of coming in. But anyway, it's a maddening experience.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Bob. No, you go first. I defer to my elder. I feel like I'm monopolizing these conversations. I don't really mean to. But these experiences that I've had over these years have brought me into different relationships with people like Oronde. And when he began to talk about his experiences at Kellogg, at his last comments, it's really very eye-opening and very revealing about the kinds of pressures that people in this position are under. For those of us who don't understand the foundation world, you've been very helpful just in making general comments today. You don't know what you've already revealed to me personally. I say that because I did not say that I convened what's called the Black Family Summit, and that's 27 Black professional organizations, and we've been doing work around disasters since Hurricane Katrina. And in that capacity, we are constantly looking at how can we channel some resources to support the work that we are doing. And I reached out to Oronde, and he's been very helpful. And I didn't get a chance to say this to you personally, but in the past month, since I saw you in Detroit, there's a sister reached out to us, and we're getting some sponsorships around some work that we're doing. I wanted to publicly thank you, because I didn't say it to you personally, because we only had a few seconds out in the hallway today. But I want to just lift him up, because every opportunity he's gotten, he's introduced me to someone who has been exceptionally helpful in supporting us in some form or fashion. The second point I wanted to make is, you know, the pressures that you're under, I can only imagine. And I want to just commend you for your stick-to-itness, your perseverance. Last and certainly not least, the grace, the understanding, and everything that's associated with what your life has been like. I am in admiration. I'd be a nutcase, you know. It wouldn't take me much to go off anyway, but I'd be nuts by now. So I just want, brother, to commend you. Your beautiful daughter, like you said, I hadn't seen her since she was a little baby. To see her in the hallway today, I literally broke down. You didn't see it. But now knowing why you left D.C. to go back to Michigan, it's even more incredible. You're very special around there. And I just wanted to say that publicly to you, because we may not see each other again for a few days. But I wanted you to know, man, that I have nothing but the utmost respect for you, and may the Creator continue to bless you, your lovely daughter, and all the great work that's ahead of you. So, Oronde, my brother, you know, I'm always writing little stuff down. And as you were speaking, you brought me back to my child welfare roots. Since I cut my teeth in this business in child welfare. And as you look forward to the future, I want to commit to you my willingness and desire to work with you to create the Annette Wilson Center for African-Centered Training in Child Welfare. Wow. So when you're ready, you let me know. And it will be, we will write it up in a way that will make sense for everybody. But I want to work with you to create that center, because it is the place that I believe we need to go back to. And I'm willing to work with you to create that center. Wow. Wow.
Let's do that again. Let's do that again. Oh, that was simply wonderful. 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 Are you guys still excited?
Yes.
Are you getting more knowledge?
Yes.